Welcome, everybody, to this edition of the Tom Green, Tom's Take Overreaction Monday, whatever you want to call it, podcast for this week. Unfortunately for our Lions, we are not going to make the playoffs. But for our guest this week, Alex Dewitt, his Rams are in the playoffs.
Thanks, Tom.
Tell us about your Rams, Alex.
Well, last time they made the playoffs, I was in middle school, and currently I have graduated with my undergrad 5 years ago almost, so it's been over half my life.
Thankfully, you're not in middle school anymore.
No.
So, if you didn't know, Alex DeWitt is at mnorthwood13 on Twitter, and he is a dedicated fan of the podcast. He's listened just about every week.
Pretty much, yeah.
So, like I've said before on the show, I like to bring in fans as well as bigger talents. So,
I'm definitely not the second.
So he's definitely a fan, but he's a big numbers guy, so he'll definitely have some numbers for me to crunch for Lions Packers, and a second show we will do for the Outback Bowl and the college football playoff preview, which you'll be sure to tune into after hearing this show. But so you have told us a little bit about our Rams are in the playoffs, and that was kind of the bet that we had on the side, that if the Rams made the playoffs, he'd be on the show. Guess what? They have, once again.
It's amazing what a team can do when you no longer have Jeff Fisher in your repertoire.
Yeah. Pretty much we talked about last week, anything that Jeff Fisher is around is bad.
It decays with the alarming rate of death.
Rams-Titans last week, Jeff Fisher was at the game, and the Rams struggled.
Both teams really struggled out the gate. First quarter, first half was not very pretty. And then everyone kind of brought it together, and Rams ended up pulling out and stopping Mariota, who's had a really bad season for him.
Mm-hmm. So once again, for Jeff Fisher fans, the Rams stopped us at the 1 yard line, so I stopped their franchise.
As best he could.
So, because Alex is a dedicated fan of our show, he's actually going to read us an ad or so before we get crunching the Lions-Packers game for this week. Well, let's talk about one of our sponsors.
Okay, Tom. Well, we're going to take a night off from Nights In. Well, not us personally. Find great seats for amazing events near you. With StubHub's Fan Protect, your order is 100% guaranteed. Buy and sell tickets safely and easily on the world's largest ticket marketplace, StubHub. Actually, the wife and I are looking at going to Pistons Thunder next month, and StubHub was cheaper than the other ticket places that are available online right now. So, hoping that holds.
Hoping that, yes, that'd be good for you guys. And if you're planning on going to Lions Packers, I'm most likely not. Tickets have gone way down because of the implications of this game, sadly. So, Lions Packers time. The Lions are out, as we had seen last week. Losing to the Bengals. As I told Seth last week, if we lose to the Bengals, God help us. Guess what? God help us.
Yeah, the Bengals are the second worst team in Ohio for the NFL, but that's not saying much because when your worst team in Ohio is the Browns, you don't have anywhere to go but up. So losing to the Bengals was really a dagger into Jim Caldwell's squad and should probably put him, if he's not already on the hot seat with management, really close.
Yeah, and that was the next talking point on this. Does this mean Caldwell is out? And I say yes, because we have a new general manager, former Patriot. Even though Caldwell has averaged, if he wins next week, a 9-7 season, which is the best that, of course, any Lions coach in my life has ever had, the expectations have gone higher with wins, and unfortunately, that was an embarrassing loss to Cincinnati. And it seems like any coach in the NFL that's on the hot seat has that one moment where either they shine or they get embarrassed. And this was the point, at least I felt, that Jim Caldwell's Lions got embarrassed.
Well, he's gotten embarrassed in big stages before. When they make it to the playoffs, they burn out in spectacular fashion usually. And when they are on the edge of it, they just kind of crash and burn against teams that no one expects them to lose to. So you're historically not a big game person, which is not good for a coach's reputation throughout the league.
Yeah, especially like Super Bowl 44, I think it was, Colts Saints. That one, of course, onside kick to start the second half, and then the Tracy Porter interception. Pick six.
There was a lot of spice coming from New Orleans. A lot of spice.
Yeah. So I may need a vignette or two talking about New Orleans, but unfortunately, I guess a Coke will have to do. So yeah, we both, at least I feel that Caldwell's out. Do you feel that way too?
I think he could be. I'm going to guess that if he's not, they're going to look at taking a larger portion of his pay toward milestone bonuses, where he may have to take a pay cut next year, and he'll get that money back if he makes the playoffs. 'Cause I know some of the teams like to try to push that on coaches. Whether or not they've actually enforced it is another story, but it seems to be a story of, you're on the hot seat, show us and we'll pay you.
Yeah, and Bob Quinn, for the record, has given Caldwell a 1-year extension. That was back in August, I believe. But only a 1-year extension means he could.
Well, the Rams gave Fisher a 3-year extension and then canned him at just over halfway past his season before the extension even kicked in. So he's already doing better than that.
Yeah, thankfully. And of course, I can't. I won't play it on the show because it has the F-bomb in it. But we ain't effing going 7-9.
Nope.
They went 4-12 that year. And
surprisingly, he went better than 4-12 because he was canned with like 6 weeks to go. So he almost had a winning record that year.
Yeah. So, with that being said, well, I feel that Caldwell is out, and Alex is kind of on the fence about it. So both these teams right now for this game, they're no playoff implications, so they're playing for the future, pretty much.
Yeah. The Packers themselves, they know what their problem is, at least on offense. On defense, they've had a few years of the defense being mediocre at best, and Aaron Rodgers just carrying the team on their shoulders. With this kind of revelation that they don't have a backup quarterback that's any better than a JV squad backup, that may, I mean, not saying Brett Hundley it shouldn't be in the NFL itself, but his games that he's been in have not been very stellar in most cases. I mean, he's shining against Cleveland, but let's face it, again, that's Cleveland.
Yeah.
Most of his other games, he's been running checkdowns, running out of the pocket because his offensive line's been spotty. Again, not a surprise when your star quarterback gets injured like that. But there's not much there on offense once Rodgers goes down. On defense, they have holes. I mean, they still have Clay Matthews, but I mean, even their stars in the secondary, Clinton Dix, he's not even really a superstar. He's just the best guy out there in their secondary, at least in my opinion. So they have a lot of holes to fill, and being in the middle of the draft is not going to be too pretty for them unless they can trade picks, which they're not really known for.
True, and yeah, that's a lot of nice jokes there with Hashan, Clinton Dix, and then David Bakhtiari's number, as most people know what that number is anyway.
Yeah.
So your typical joke on this on this show, as Alex is known.
Nodding my head.
I pull those jokes on here all the time, but yeah, Green Bay. It seems like every year that Rodgers has been there, even the Super Bowl year, it just seems like the defense are just playing like they're a bunch of individual stars rather than a unit. And the Rams defense, well, of course you know more about that, but they seem to at times play more like a unit than Green Bay's defense.
Well, they kind of have to because the linebackers, they've had Ogletree out like 4 or 5 games sporadically this season. They've had issues with the'd coming, and they'd actually sign a linebacker from practice squad, if I remember correctly, this week, so they could fit their number, and actually played that guy like 5 or 6 downs because they were so thin in that position. Now, Green Bay doesn't have that problem generally with defense. They just don't work.
Right, and although they should have canned Dom Capers last year, the reason why they didn't was a good reason, because they couldn't find anybody better to replace him. It's like, well, if you can't find anybody to replace you, then we got to keep
You're stuck.
Yeah, they were stuck for this season on defense. So that's they've definitely exposed the holes that they have on both sides of the ball. And with that being said, brings to my next talking point. Might not be a huge talking point on Twitter or Facebook, but I feel this way. Mike McCarthy, is he on the hot seat?
Knowing Green Bay, no. They're such a conservative ownership group. I mean, technically, only fan-owned team officially, but the people who own the shares don't really get much say in it. But the people who run the organization are very conservative on making big decisions. That's why you have 2 quarterbacks over almost 20 years now with no changes, barring injury. Nothing changes. People go to Green Bay if they want to go to Green Bay, or they get signed to Green Bay, and they stay there. Very rarely do you see someone play 4 seasons, leave, and then never show up again. They try to keep the people there, which is what's causing part of the problems this year.
Yeah. McCarthy's had the record, but if I were a Green Bay fan, I would think about it, but of course I'd think twice about it because Aaron Rodgers.
Yes.
And that's another talking point I'm actually going to add to this segment, and that is I read a headline. I didn't read the actual article that that teams have complained that Green Bay has used the IR the wrong way on Rodgers and they have to release him. Have you read this story?
I saw something about that. I think that's more of obviously the fans will not, most of them won't have read the NFL rulebook word for word, and the manager's little pamphlet they get, they definitely don't see that. So I think that's something that the ownership meeting come off season will have to look at and make a decision on how they run that. But it was kind of a clunky way to use IR officially for the Packers.
Yeah, you do have the IR designated to return outlet on your team, but that only lasts 8 weeks, and the last I had read, that ends after like week 8 or something like that. And Rodgers got hurt in week 7?
I think so.
In week 7, so they were lucky to have that 8-week designated to return outlet anyway for Rodgers, and even I'm not sure if I had said it on the show, but if I did, I'm not surprised. I knew Carolina was going to beat Green Bay with or without Rodgers, and that was not because I can't stand Aaron Rodgers. That was because if Carolina can beat the NFC North champion Minnesota Vikings, they can beat the Packers with or without Rodgers. So I was the only one that was not surprised that Rodgers lost, but I was surprised that he threw 3 picks.
Now, to kind of pivot back to your actual team focus, the Lions,
Yeah.
Stafford, I think that they lost last week. They ended their playoff chances. I almost think that the way he was playing the last couple weeks after he had that injury, that maybe they should have just thought about canning the season there because they were so close to being out and just putting Rudock in for the rest of the season. Now I know Lions fans are going to hate that. They don't want to see that. They paid their boy Stafford big money to play, but if he's playing like that with taped fingers or just not looking himself, maybe you think about just letting him cool off for the rest of the season and get back to shape for next year. There's a lot of things the Lions can do in the draft, even though they're about the same spot as the Packers, to make their defense work better and maybe finally get a running back that can have a 1,000-yard season without having to question him.
Yeah, I didn't want Stafford to sit, but if we'd have been completely out, then I would have been okay with that. But since we were not completely out, then I liked that Stafford had to have gotten to play. But I see your point. I mean, you don't want your quarterback injured for a longer period of time than what he actually will be.
Yes.
And if you're out of the playoffs, then get rest and get ready for next season. That's pretty much the focus of this game for both teams, is the future, next season. So if Detroit jumps out to like a 21-0 lead, you might see Jake Rudock come in and Stafford sit the rest of the game. As for the Packers, good luck in Detroit.
Huntley, you might be looking at getting released this year just because the fans don't like you. And I know, again, you're a backup quarterback. You're not expected to carry a team like the starter who's usually near MVP level and is trying to make his case for a Hall of Fame when he retires already.
Yeah, so both teams are pretty much in the same rut of mediocrity, I guess, if you call it that.
My comfort zone.
Yeah.
My comfort zone.
Yes. As I said on Facebook this week, Detroit Lions, to the pit of misery! Dewey!
Yes.
Dewey! So with that being said, score predictions. How will New Year's Eve turn out for the fans in the state of Michigan and the UP in the state of Wisconsin?
I know people from the UP. They're actually more Packers fans, but
That's unfortunate.
yeah, it because they're technically closer. So Green Bay's closer to them, and they have that big. Well, it's a barrier. There's a bridge there, but there's a mental barrier that the Lower Peninsula is not really part of Michigan to some people. That they want to be their own state, but since they don't have a football team, they go to Green Bay. You know, that's how the cookie crumbles. So, being it in Detroit, right?
Yes.
This is
Yep,
Detroit.
exactly.
Okay, that's what I thought. I was just making sure. Being in Detroit and without Aaron Rodgers and with nothing really to play for, I think the Lions will edge out probably 21-20, 28-27. It's going to be a close game, but it's not going to be a very fun game. You're going to see a lot of garbage time with where the depth is, where there's a lot of depth on the roster, and you're going to see a lot of careless plays because no one really wants to be there. That seems to be the end of the season hallmark for teams who are right about 8-8.
Yeah, I would say for the Caldwell thing that for the good work that he's done to make Detroit respectable the last few years, his reward per se is to coach this last game, not fire him until Black Monday. Yeah, which I think the writing's on the wall. It does not matter how this game turns out. I'm going to say Detroit wins as well, like 28-17, something like that. A little more, not as close, but you never know. Green Bay could win the game the exact same score. It's just a travesty for us, or for the Lions fans around here. That's right, you're a Rams fan, which the Rams are one of the rapid fire games for this week because Alex is here.
and with Garoppolo playing so well in San Francisco, it almost could be a pick a rapid fire game on its own because of how well they've been playing, and because the Rams really are pretty much stuck in that 3 seed. There's got to be some craziness in the South to get them down.
Yeah, and we'll talk about that a little bit more once we hit that game. But yeah, I actually had a thought to myself this morning that I will say on when we get to that game. So Alex says 28-27 or 21-20, 1-point game, Detroit win. I say 11-point Detroit win. But either way, just a sad ending to the season. A perfect describer of that.
And he's really sad because he was talking up on Saturday about how he wanted to go to Los Angeles because he thought the way it would roll is that more than likely they'd play the Rams in the playoffs, and we're not going to get to see them in the Coliseum next year because it looked, I believe, at the beginning of the season they announced that'd be a home game in Detroit again. So he wouldn't get to see see that matchup until the new Inglewood Stadium is built. So he was getting all ready. He was showing me flight prices and trying to see if he knew anyone in the area. He was really excited for that.
Yeah, I was thinking about that whole game Christmas Eve, and it didn't turn out that way.
No.
But at least I saved $400, and perhaps I'll use that money to go to a game. Or maybe go to a game in the off season or something like that, basketball, baseball, or something like that. So before we hit rapid fire, why don't we have Alex read another literally cheesy ad, because we're talking about Lions Packers. Another literally cheesy ad.
Learn about Fanatics, and it's not just their name. It's who they are. Loyal, passionate fans dedicated to the favorite teams and to the sports that they love. That's why they're honored to be able to offer fans the world's largest collection of official sports apparel from all leagues, teams, and players you love. From the latest most popular fan gear, including specialty jerseys and team-issued t-shirts, to popular coaches' polos and sideline hats, like Jim Harbaugh's special Old School M.
Which I have one of those.
I know. The team shop is a one-stop destination for fan apparel. Celebrate your pride and passion with them, where you can always find sports merchandise that you'll be wearing your heart. Excuse me.
That'll have you wearing your heart on your sleeve.
Thank you, Tom.
Which is kind of hard to do because because if a doctor's got to stitch out the heart, put it on the sleeve. Okay, that might have went a little too far, but you get what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So to the rapid fire segment, it's down to week 17. And Seth lost 2 games, as far as I know. If I didn't actually look and do the final record on him, but he did not get to the 818 winning percentage that we're looking for. And so it's down to 2 people here on this last week. Aaron Gosser, who has the 818 winning percentage, and Alex, who I made sure to put in 11 games in the segment so that there's a chance for him to win outright and for a tie, perhaps. And the tiebreaker, I'll say it right now before we get started, is both of you will pick a playoff team. I'll have Aaron go first because he's had the lead for the longest amount of time. And then whoever gets the farthest in the playoffs will be the winner.
Wouldn't it be crazy if it was a Super Bowl matchup?
That would be something else. That'd be something else. So, to get the rapid fire games going here, we have 7 bowl games and 4 NFL games. First one, we're going to go the Armed Forces Bowl. I think, no, not the Armed Forces Bowl. I forget what bowl it's named, but Virginia and Navy.
Virginia and Navy. That is, I have everything right here. That is the Military Bowl.
The Military Bowl.
This one, I really like Navy just because triple option, but I'm not sure. I picked Navy in all the bowl pick things online. Their last second heartbreak to Army and the last couple of last week's their season, which were very disappointing, were not great. But Virginia has just been so all season, so I'm going to take Navy and their running game over Virginia. Say 21-10.
Alrighty, I like that pick. If people have followed me on Twitter, they know how much I love the triple option. Triple option, like Shrek, is love. Triple option is life. Navy 27, Virginia 14. The Holiday Bowl, Washington State and Michigan State.
Oh, well, I'm in the same boat as Tom where I'm a U of M fan. And although Michigan State, D'Antonio has done really great down there, I have to give him credit for making Michigan State almost a yearly competitor for the Big Ten and really kind of putting Michigan's decade of shame to the forefront. I am going to go against them and go with Washington State just because I think the Pac-10 was a little bit better in that regard. They didn't have, obviously, a team in the playoffs, but they got a lot of it. They had a much more consistent conference, and I think Washington State will win that one 28-20.
I like that pick as well. As Cody Klontz and I have talked about before, don't ever bet against Mike Leach. Because Mike Leach has a lot of funny sound bites. Washington State 24, Michigan State 10. Because we all know how much I love Michigan State. Yeah, no, God.
As much as you love Michigan State, I see your next one here is USC
and Ohio State.
And this one I also went against the Big Ten team, not because it's Ohio State. Okay, I did my best to be unbiased here. I went with USC because I think their offense can really shock Ohio State and their traditional Big Ten style of play, and I just don't like how OSU's offense is run most of the season. Yeah, they beat Michigan, but I don't like how they run. They've been very inconsistent in production. There's been good production, but it's been all over the place. So unless JT Barrett has like this monster game, I don't see them beating USC.
I'm going to go USC as well. One, because, again, Ohio State, but they didn't really, like I'd said in the Big Ten Championship preview, OSU didn't look all that impressive against U of M. And if Michigan had somebody not named John O'Korn as their starting quarterback, Michigan would have won that game. Yes, give me USC 27-20. Close game there. Washington and Penn State.
Oh, Washington. The other team from Mike Leach's hometown. Wait, no. This one I'm going to go Big Ten. Penn State, really good team. Really crappy time to lose for both their losses were kind of inconvenient based off of how the weeks went for everyone else in the rankings. But I'm going to give Penn State 31-20. More offense in that one than I think a lot of the high-profile games will generally have, but I think Penn State will pull out.
Yeah, if you live on the East Coast, have you seen any of Washington's games? I haven't, because of their scheduled times are like always after 5 o'clock Pacific.
Yeah.
And even Chris Peterson came out and said, "Who's watching us out there? Who's going to watch us?"
Well, when your southern foes in Oregon get Nike money, they get priority when there's West Coast games. So, just a subtle dig.
Yeah. I like Saquon Barkley. I think if he falls to Detroit, they should draft him. I like Penn State. Give me Penn State 24, Washington 14, more lower scoring. But Penn State will, despite Joe Moorhead going to Mississippi State.
Yeah.
Underlining story on that one. Continuing with the college games, 3 more here. Virginia Tech and Oklahoma State.
Oh, I'd really like to say Virginia Tech, but I really can't. I'm going to go with Oklahoma State. Big 12, again, I mean, their conference game might have saved them with Oklahoma making it in, but the rest of the Big 12 has been much better than they had been in quite a few years.
Mm-hmm. So you also can't really go against Mike Gundy because...
Come after me! I'm a man! I'm 40!
Even though he's 51 now, I believe.
Yeah, that's a long time to be in a college position.
I still, in fact, side note, I still remember back in Sunday school, yes, people, I go to church still. Back in Sunday school, when Alex Dewitt and I were in Sunday school, I remember telling our teacher, Chuck Locke, "I'm a man! I'm 40! Tommy, you're 14! I don't care! I'm 40!" Yeah, give me Oklahoma State in that one. Vatech is a good team. Justin Fuentes getting them turned around really fast. Back to the old Frank Beamer days when they were good. Oklahoma State 27, Virginia Tech 26. Very close. Yeah. Stanford, TCU.
Well, this is one that I was I thought really setting how I was going to go. I was TCU all the way this year. Stanford has not been was not the same team without McCaffrey this year. They won their games, or they won enough games to be ranked high enough to get a good bowl. But I think TCU is the better team. TCU by like 4 or 5. Still one possession, but it's going to be a TCU game.
This is the first time where I'm going to go not so fast. And the reason why is Stanford is always, even though they don't have the names like they've had, they've always been there. They've always been in the, they've won, they've defended home turf very well, despite being, of course, on the road in a bowl game. You really can't bet against David Shaw either. Like Mike Leach, you really can't bet against David Shaw's team. In fact, I think David Shaw is getting some NFL calls, if I'm not mistaken.
That wouldn't surprise me. There's a couple teams who are going to be looking for the college people to call up again this year. And with the average NFL coaching age been going up a lot the past decade, this year was the first one was a shock. McVay 34, but mostly new hires into the NFL are over the hill technically. So I think you're going to get some calls from the college kids. College kids to move up to the NFL coaching level this year.
I mean, if anyone's looking for an NFL coach, hit me up. You're talking college kids. Hit me up. Stanford 27, TCU 24. Is Ukropina still on the team?
I'm not sure.
If
Not
so,
positive.
then Conrad Ukropina kicks a 50-yard field goal to win the game for Stanford. And the final rapid-fire college football game of 2017, Wisconsin and Miami.
Well, I like the turnover chain, but the turnover chain has failed them in the last few weeks of the season. They did not do very well, and I think that's going to carry over. Wisconsin, very strong team from a very weak division, but I think they can pull out against Miami. I'm going to say 34-20 with like 8 turnovers in the game total. It's going to be a mess, but it's going to be higher scoring.
I like Wisconsin in that game as well. Besides, I read a stat somewhere. Besides Alabama and Clemson, Wisconsin has always been consistently undefeated or 1 loss or something like that every year.
And with
That's
the way
five.
with the way the Big Ten set up, that helps them a lot because Minnesota hasn't really been good in decades. I mean, like powerful good, consistently good. Iowa's usually good, but they have wonky games like blow out Ohio State and then get dropped by someone who shouldn't lose a game to. So yeah, Wisconsin has an edge there.
Yeah, Wisconsin 31, Miami 20. So moving on to the NFL games, and let's go ahead and knock out Alex's game of the, not America's game of the week, but Alex's game of the week.
Yes.
San Francisco and the Rams.
Well, if you remember early in the season, I think it was only the second game of the season. It was really 42-40, really close game.
And
nail-biter.
Yeah, and Alex was hating me so much because I was really hoping that San Francisco would win that game. It's not because of the Rams. It was because I liked what San Francisco was doing to rebuild.
Yeah,
and I wanted to see them win.
I mean, when they were 2-10, they were considered the best 2-10 team in the league, and now they're 5-10. Everyone goes, "Yeah, it's probably about where they should be," because they have a lot of issues on defense and playmakers on offense. But now they have a quarterback who is actually, not brain dead half the time. Garoppolo, I think, was the hidden gem under Tom Brady's wing. That once they got rid of him, that he was actually slightly better than Jacoby Brissett.
And another thing, if you've been listening to myself, Jeff Lyons, and Brandon Rush as well, from the old, and dare I say this on air, Pick Six magazine days, we were really talking about how good Jimmy Garoppolo was going to be once he got out of EIU. So we saw this coming years ago. Go ahead and continue.
Yeah, but I think Garoppolo is better than Brissett, and until Brissett gets an offensive line, I will not call that a definite stamp it, but I think Garoppolo is in a much better position with a better team right now, and I think he could really mess up the Seahawks next year, who are looking to try to stay where they are with no personnel changes again, or losing people, because that's Pete Carroll's way. And with Arizona in rebuild, it could be a three-way run for the division crown next year. But I'm going to take the Rams 38-24.
So the big point I was going to discuss in this game was perhaps the Rams may want to rest their starters. And the reason why is, for some wonky reason, I think Seattle's going to end up in the playoffs.
Yeah.
And if you're a Rams fan, you don't want to face Seattle in Week 1 of the playoffs, despite the Legion of not the Legion of Boom, the Legion of.
And I remember last time when the Rams were on the edge of the playoffs, and they always played Seattle Week 16, like 3 or 4 years in a row back before the turn of the decade, and they were like, that was when they were the 7-9, 8-8, but the division was so terrible that they would have gotten in the playoffs anyway. All these letdowns against Seattle at the end of the season that just killed it. And then Seattle goes and makes the playoffs, and they got close a couple times during those years. They didn't make it. But the case to beat San Francisco in LA is really high. The LA, when they moved, everyone knows that LA has not typically a football town. People follow who's winning, and the last 20 years it was the Lakers. So everyone's a basketball fan in LA right now.
Yeah.
The Rams winning against their now a renewed rival and former heavy rival, I think that's going to be a statement to make against San Francisco. So that's why I think they're going to play through as it is as if it was a playoff game, just so they could make a point.
Yeah, and I could see Sean McVay doing that, but it was just a thought I had this morning that maybe they should rest him and see if they can try to back down to the 4 seed so that they would avoid Seattle. But then again, you would end up with Carolina. And that's
which is better.
Well, yeah, not an easy test, but better. So I'm actually going to say not so fast. I'm going to go San Francisco 41, LA 38. It's going to be another high-scoring game like the last San Francisco Rams game was, but we'll see. I mean, I like what the Rams are doing too, but what the Niners are doing as well. So that being said, a clunker, Houston and Indy. In fact, the last 3 are clunkers.
Pillow fight of the week, and as I'm scrolling through the actual records, that is technically, it's only 7 combined wins between them.
Like I had said to Jeff Lyons for the second Lions-Bears preview, we are Ryan McGee bottom 10 fans.
Yes. Jacoby Brissett in Indianapolis, he's probably going to get stuck by an Andrew Luck next year, barring he doesn't have an underlying condition that they're not disclosing, which, one, wouldn't surprise me, but two, would also be a shock to Indianapolis fans. But Houston just fell right apart. They were doing really well at the beginning of the season. They switched to Deshaun Watson. They were winning games. They were having convincing victories. And then he goes down, and it's just been a complete cluster for them since then.
Yeah.
I'm going to take the Colts 20-14. I don't think there's going to be very much scoring. There's going to be probably one of those touchdowns as a pick six. I don't know for who, but it's going to be a pick six.
Yeah. If TJ Yates were to pick a favorite number, I bet he'd pick 6.
I wouldn't blame him.
Give me the Colts in that game. 20-10 or something like that. Before you watch that game, check out Caroline Cahn's Twitter because she looks like Jenny Taft. And that might be one of the only important big parts of this game. Like I said, a clunker. 20-10. Give me the Colts. Pagano, who knows if he's going to be fired. Or O'Brien. Oh, yep. Just a like in 2009, a cash for clunker.
Yep.
Dallas and Philly.
Oh, this one is, I'm going to call it a no-brainer. I'm going to say even with former Ram Nick Foles starting there because, Jeff Fisher picks people and then doesn't know how to use them. Picks up people, doesn't know how to use them, sends them back to where they came, and they do great. I'm going to say Eagles 38, Cowboys 15. I'm not seeing a touchdown in Dak Prescott's future this week. He's had a couple rough times now. That could change because Zeke is back, right?
Yes.
So he could do something, but I think that with the way their season's gone, they're all demoralized. They're just going to try to get to the offseason to get some workout reps in and just go to their personal trainers in their home in their homes,
or in Cabo, or wherever Zeke went. Anyway, if Dallas were in the playoff picture still, I'd take Dallas. But because this has turned into pretty much a clunker because Philly has nothing to play for now that they've already clinched home field, give me the Fly Eagles Fly, as Alex seeing me doing a stupid bird wave.
If a bird flew like that, it'd be in your backyard, on the ground, rolling in the snow.
Eagles 31, Cowboys 10. Last rapid fire game of 2017, barring a tie, Buffalo and Miami.
Who thought Jay Cutler would be able to make an implication in the playoffs for a team? Now, it's rare because the Bills have to get a lot of help to get to the playoffs at this point because they need Chargers and Ravens to lose, plus a win. So it's not going to be pretty for them. But I am going to take the Bills in Miami where the weather's nice, or should be nice, 28-20. Bills, Tyrod Taylor, I don't think he's going to be there next year. He's pretty much, if he actually gets to play, he'll be playing for contract money somewhere else. Peterman's a joke. I don't see that changing. But the Dolphins have Jay Cutler against a defense that's actually done quite well, which was not a storyline at the beginning of the season anyone thought of.
Right. Nathan Peterman, sponsored by Pepperidge Farm Puff Pastry Turnovers.
Yes.
5-pack. In one half. With that being said, give me the Bills. Since in the year 2000, there were 122 professional sports franchises. All of them have made the playoffs at least once, but one. The Buffalo Bills.
I feel for you, Buffalo fans. Honestly, I feel for you.
The only Bill that has won in Buffalo is Bill Belichick.
Which is something that they don't want to hear. I can guarantee you that.
Yeah. Even Jim Kelly has come out and said Tom Brady needs to retire for the Bills to win the division.
I don't know if Brady gets a contract for an awful sum of money and then goes to, age 50 and tries playing in his geriatric walker, because he says he can play till that long. I don't know how it's physically possible for as many hits as he ends up taking every year. But I think they have a chance to win against Tom Brady if Tom Brady's going to walk around the field. just long snap it to him every time.
Yeah. Give me Buffalo 27, Miami 17. So that is our Detroit Green Bay and last rapid fire preview for this week. And in another show that we will have our Michigan Bowl and college playoff preview. So make sure to join us for that. And enjoy the Lions game if you can, I guess.